After its reveal last summer, Ubisoft are finally getting closer to the release of Far Cry 6. Sure, there's been a few delays that have pushed it back from what was originally meant to be a February release date, but we've now been treated to the first gameplay reveal from this title, giving us a good long look at what's new and different in this mainline entry in the series. So, we've dived in and picked out 6 of the big things that you need to know about Far Cry 6. Far Cry 6 takes us to the island of Yara, this decaying banana republic with a dictator that is tightening his grip in the face of rising dissent. For the first time, there will be a major city at the heart of this island. It's called Esperanza, and it is something that's very different from what we usually see in a Far Cry game. This is the heart of Castillo's regime, and so this is where you'll find the toughest enemies to fight, patrolling the streets with tanks in tow and just like his elite bodyguards. Fights in this region look like they will be much more cramped. You'll have to use secret passageways that you find below the streets or take to the rooftops to get around the city. But you'll also have much better chances to lay an ambush in this quote-unquote urban jungle. However, while there is this new city, much of the island is as you would expect from Far Cry. There's actual jungles, there's hills and mountains, there's swamps, and it's filled with wildlife, some of which I'm sure will be hostile towards you. That will feel truer to the traditional Far Cry gameplay that we're used to, and it's likely that this is where you'll spend the vast majority of your game time, taking the island back from Castillo one outpost at a time. One new twist as you explore, and you might potentially be doing this in Castillo-held territory, is the ability to holster your gun and go a little bit incognito, blending into the background. Just maybe don't get too close to the actual soldiers who might recognize you as the most notorious guerrilla on this island.
Not seen him.
We've already alluded to these in the city, but the Guerrilla secret pathways will cut across the island as a whole and not just Esperanza. These are obscure trails that you can use to get around without resorting to using the heavily patrolled, checkpointed roadways. I mean, you can try to go through these checkpoints and holster your weapon, but the Guerrilla pathways add an element of discoverability to the game world. You'll be handed a special map that shows you a bunch of them, but you won't know all of these pathways from the off. There will be people to meet here, there'll be hidden caches of gear, and much more to find if you use them and discover more of them. In a major change for the series, Far Cry 6 will have an actual protagonist, and not just a blank slate for you to project onto. Not only that, but Dani Rojas was born and raised on Yara, so they're a native to this land. It's even explained why they're so good in a fight, because they were on course to join the military, going through the training, but then decided that they'd had enough and wanted to flee to the US. Luckily for the rebellion, they were convinced that there's something worth fighting for here, and joined Libertad, becoming effectively a one-person army that is determined to take down Castillo's regime. You'll get to pick between male and female versions of Dani Rojas to play as whichever gender you like, and they will appear in cutscenes. They'll have an actual identity, and this all feels like a real step forward for the series to tell a deeper story, instead of just having such a laser focus on the arch-antagonist as the last few games have. In creating this world, Ubisoft has taken inspiration from the resolver attitude of the Cuban people, where, after being cut off from imports from many parts of the rest of the world, they knuckled down and made do with what they had, restoring worn-down items and repurposing things for something completely different. Far Cry 6 takes that notion and feeds it into the game as a whole, so you should be able to see that throughout the game world, with the classic 1950s US cars that have been maintained and kept up, and things like maybe a fan that's created out of a telephone and a cut-up record. It'll be both in the little touches and the big ones. Some of the FND bases, which are the outposts in this game, are even styled to look like they've repurposed a school or a radio station and put a different spin on the kinds of outposts that you might have seen in previous games. You also have all of the military weapons in the game, and they can be customized extensively, perhaps attaching an American silencer to a Russian weapon and using armor-piercing bullets, but then having a resolver scope, which is cobbled together out of glass and other parts. And then there's also the Guerrilla Rides, where you can pimp your cars with turrets, nitros, shovel ramps, and other countermeasures for when you get into a bit of a scrap. One key element to customizing your character is the gear that you wear, and this is something that is a bit more in depth than in Far Cry 5. It's through this that you'll be able to shift your playstyle. You've got headgear, chest, hand, leg and foot gear, and you can mix and match different items that give you different buffs and perks. So you can put on a top, trousers and shoes that are designed to boost your stealth, let's call the shoes sneakers maybe, and have that as your baseline as you then add to your sneaky credentials with gloves that can help you land your throwing knife throws, and marksman goggles, literally some ski goggles with a crosshair on one side, that improve headshot damage. You'll also want to pack a few gadgets, like those aforementioned throwing knives, healing syringes, a sticky EMP grenade, and even a humble baseball to distract or stagger enemy guards. We've already talked about the resolver attitude, but Ubisoft take this to an extreme with the resolver weapons. They go way, way beyond just customizing an AK-47 or whatever. Resolver weapons are built entirely out of repurposed parts, taking a bunch of disparate elements like lawnmower engines and pipes and a drum of bullets made out of a food tin to create a minigun. You can also cook up things like an impromptu nail gun, a flamethrower, and a CD player turned into a CD firing gun. There's even a fireworks-based rocket launcher. Honestly, some of them look pretty balmy, and certainly they are a few steps out of the realms of reality and into this kind of sensationalized silliness. But then, that's before we talk about the Supremos. Supremos are resolver ultimates, and you wear them as a backpack. Again, cobbling together a bunch of random elements into something completely new and wild. If you want a jetpack, let's make one, but, well, it's not exactly going to let you fly around the island. Instead, it's just going to lift you off the ground as it fills your surrounding area with fire, getting you out of harm's way whilst char-grilling everything nearby. And maybe you're feeling a bit outgunned and need some artillery support. Well, let's just have a backpack that sticks a whole bunch of rocket tubes onto you for a barrage of explosives that will rain down on your enemies. They really are the height of the excess that you will find in Far Cry 6. And that is going to round up our highlights from the Far Cry 6 gameplay reveal, but there's plenty more to know as well. There's things like the flak cannons that dot around the island that will prevent air travel before you destroy them, giving you another thing to check off as you're exploring the world. We've also barely touched upon the checkpoints, and we didn't even mention that you can ride a horse or talk about the Fangs for Hire Amigos system, which includes the adorable Chorizo, the sausage dog, and Guapo, the soldier-eating crocodile. All in all though, this is shaping up to be a good step forward for the Far Cry series. It's certainly leaning into the wild and wacky side of things, but there are also changes to the world design, character progression and gear, and just the way that the story is being told as well. We're certainly looking forward to seeing more, with Ubisoft just having announced that the game will be releasing on the 7th of October 2021. Thanks as ever for joining us for this video, and hopefully you have enjoyed what you've seen. Make sure to head over to thesixthaxis.com where we've got our written preview, but before you go, let's cover those YouTube things of liking, subscribing, clicking that bell icon, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!